Here's our original, and you can see how excessive the wear is on this synchro ring. So this one's probably even worse. See how smoothed over these are, how deep in there is. This clutch surface doesn't feel the best. So I got some replacements. Here are the replacements we got. Got the original machining on them still, very nice. Clutch surface is about perfect. There's our replacement. See how much wear, no big gouges, everything looks really nice. Here's the original one we took out. See how wore off all these points are. See the wear starting down in on these. So I am assembling the detent balls and springs in the new Synchronizer assembly on the table. And there's a special tool to do this. It's 89-580-10. And I was trying to rack my brain for a way to come up and do this, and I decided to go look, and I just about fell over because we had it. So I'll show you how it's done here. I've already got a couple of them in. So first off, inside here you can see that there's a hole, and that lines up with the pockets for these springs and detent balls. And then you take this rod and you shove the detent ball in, and then you spin the ring to capture it. Then when you're all done, you put the blocker ring on it and pass it through, and that engages the detent balls in the blocker ring, and that way this assembly is together. So let's work through a couple here. All right, so first thing we do is put our spring in there. Hopefully you can see that. So you put the spring in down there, you shove him in the hole. And then this rod has got a magnet on the end of it. So you take one of your detent balls, you assemble it on your rod. You line your rod up with this groove, you line it up with your hole, and you shove the hole works in, and then twist it past, and then remove your rod, and that ball is now captured by this blocker ring pilot. All right, so at this point we've got this 89 580-10 blocker pilot in. We've got all 4 of our springs and balls in, and we're now going to insert our blocker ring to assemble this synchro. So once it's together, we'll have to be careful with it to make sure that we don't knock it out of position and knock these all over the shop and lose them. So what you do is you line these up close as you can, and then as close to one motion as you can, you want to shove this down onto the blocker ring. So we're going to try to do that right now. Now if you can see there, one of them actually popped out, so I must have had one lined up with a notch. So I'll take it back apart, reassemble it, and try again. All right, so reassembled. Take 2 at this. And hopefully you can see through the gap. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4, all assembled in there. So we got it that time. So we are now ready to install this on our shaft. We'll start stacking frictions and steels up, and we'll get the synchronizer back on, and then we can finish assembling this shaft. In this bucket over here, I've been soaking the friction disc for this synchro in high tran. So you'll see me grabbing them out of there all oily and sticking them in the can. So we're looking for 5 and 4, 5 frictions, 4 steels. Set this in here. Line it up. New frictions. We're going to wipe, brand new friction discs, we're going to wipe these down with some acetone before we install them, make sure everything's clean, no grease, oil on them, anything that could cause them to glaze up right away. This transmission is getting all genuine Case IH parts, so this should come out really nice. Like I said, we're undoing a lot of bad that a previous mechanic or owner did to this transmission. So once the one's in the can, we're actually going to stack them on the synchronizer ring and then drop the synchronizer ring in. These springs that were missing on the original synchro hub, Synchronizer ring, actually work to hold the clutch plates in place while you're assembling. So that's what they're there for. So as you can see, we got that shaft pretty much all back together. We're really close to being able to heat the bearings up and put those on, and we would have a complete shaft. Then we just have to do the counter shaft, and we would be ready to reassemble the range transmission housing for the most part. And I missed this on teardown, but when I got ready to put it back together, hopefully you can see this. This is the retaining dowel that holds this shaft all together once it's in. You can see it's all beat up. There's a big crack in the end of it. So I don't think I better put that back in. I'll get one of those ordered, and we will finish assembling the shaft and heating the bearings when I get that in. This is one of those situations I was talking about where we're fixing the last guy's mistakes. These two bolts hold the MFD clutch housing into this range transmission housing, and you can see they must have had an oil leak, and they looks like they used about a whole tube of silicone on there to try to stop the leak. So when we got the tractor, it wasn't leaking there that we could tell, so they must have got it sealed up. But I do have the right sealing washers and hardware to go in there so we don't have this problem. The last couple things we need to do on this housing is we need to pull the MFD clutch out and take a look at those clutches, make sure that is all in good shape, make sure it doesn't look like the rest of the transmission, and then we need to pull these two bearing cups and then give this a final wash down. I've got all the gasket surfaces cleaned up on it, blocked down. I've got the top plate blocked down, cleaned up. I marked it so I know which transmission shift reel is going which hole, which way's up on this. So hopefully you can see it marked. And got my letter stamps out, so stamping everything. So everything should be labeled good. I've already got the remote valves rebuilt, so those will be all resealed and ready to go back on when we get the rest of this stuff done. And then on the counter shaft, we've got a synchro to rebuild just like this one, and we're gonna rebearing it. That one wasn't in nearly as bad a shape as the input shaft. However, when I pulled it apart just now, I found one of the springs was broke. So I'm kind of glad I pulled that apart, even though it looked and felt okay from outward appearances. I'll get that replaced. So, and I am missing one ball out of here. I actually stole it for the other synchro, knowing that I had to get parts for this shaft anyway. So I'll get that stuff ordered, and when it comes in, we'll do that shaft, and I will go ahead and start pulling those bearing cups out of there. That looks a little better. I would sure think we could get that to seal up without using a giant ring of silicone. So this is our MFD clutch. Pull this hub off. And you can see we've got, kind of like our synchronizer, we've got a friction of steel, so on and so forth, and that's what makes up our clutch. This is a new clutch disc. I was going to rebuild this, and an easy way to check, see how worn they are, is see if you can fit that in there. And they don't feel that worn, but like there, I can't fit that in. I can get it in there. Can't get it in there. So you could probably leave this and run it, and it would work for a while. But the problem is the labor to get to it is so in depth and so involved that by the time you take all of this tractor back apart to get to here, you might as well just pay for the few parts it is, fix it, and be done. We already know the rest of this housing, whoever was in it did a lot of bad, so we're fixing a lot of mistakes here, and I sure don't want there to be one in here in a ceiling ring in the way the spring is oriented. I kind of doubt whoever had this apart had this particular piece apart. These aren't that easy to get apart. It does take a press, and there's a big spring back here that applies these whenever there's not hydraulic pressure. So I do think this is probably original, but I think in the interest of doing the best job we can, we better go ahead and rebuild